Welcome to Technovation. I'm your host, Peter High. My guest today is Willard Lee. Will is the Chief Information and Innovation Officer of the Hanover Insurance Group, a company he joined in 2003. In this role, he's responsible for delivering and maintaining the strategic applications that support the company's business operations, its agent partners, and its customers across commercial, personal, and specialty lines. Will also manages innovation efforts, monitoring industry trends across the value chain and potential impacts on the Hanover more generally speaking. He has held numerous roles inside and outside of IT, and I look forward to discussing the advantages of his career path in this conversation, in addition to understanding better his pathways to innovation. Will, welcome to Technovation. It's great to speak with you today.
Thank you very much. I appreciate you guys having me today and for us to talk a little bit more about the Hanover's journey.
I'm looking forward to that, indeed. Well, maybe we can begin with, for those who may be less familiar with it, Will, maybe you can take a quick moment and offer a little background into the Hanover Insurance Group's business. Talk a bit about the organization.
Yeah, no, we're, for us, we're a leading property and casualty insurance company. So we have, sort of three main divisions in the company. So we have a personal lines business, sort of a core commercial business, and a specialty business. And for us, I think our uniqueness in our operating model is that everything that we do is through our independent agents. So we partner with a subset of what we consider the best in class agents, and then from there we have the typical services of self-service for our customers, and then onto the claims process and so forth. But the uniqueness for us is that subset of agents that we work with across the United States, and the partnerships that we create with them to really make sure that that the businesses that they're bringing to us and that the services that we're bringing to them and their customers are obviously world class.
Excellent. And you're the Executive Vice President, Chief Information and Innovation Officer, two eyes there. Talk a bit about the two sides of your responsibilities, if you would.
Yeah. So the innovation piece started off first. So just a little bit of background about myself. So I'm a bit of a boomerang back into IT. So I've actually started off my career in IT here, went off and I did a couple of different business roles. I worked in our corporate development area for about 6 or 7 years when we were building our specialty practice, just basically bringing on and doing due diligences on companies. From there, I went into leading our product area of the insurance products. And then from there, I went into this innovation role first, but actually before I had the IT piece. So the innovation side of it has always been, sort of the part that, when we think about, the future of where we think the company's going, where we think P&C is going, that sort of outside in view of where our distribution partners with our agencies are going, what do we think is happening with digital self-service with our customers. It's sort of the leading edge of that is where I started with the innovation side. And then about 2 years ago, I also took on the CIO role, and together with the leadership of the company, we decided to keep these two pieces together. Just because, if you think about it in today's world, this is why it's such an exciting time to be in technology, is that literally everything that we do is around technology, and the innovation side of the house, where we're looking at trends and piloting things and trying to do, quick test and learn type pilots. That is actually just, it's a version of technology, that we're doing. And then at the same side, on the other side, there's it's a little bit more traditional, where, we have to worry about the infrastructure. We have to worry about cybersecurity, to keep our company safe. And really what we're trying to do is blend those two worlds together, because we feel like in today's world, with how quickly things are changing in the P&C world, like having those two pieces together makes the most sense.
That's fascinating. As you alluded to, Will, you have, as I was saying to you earlier, there's some people that have the same job in many companies. You've had many jobs in the same company. And I can only imagine that
you bring a richness to that experience, a cognizance of how this business operates. You know the players unusually well coming into your now dual set of responsibilities.
Yeah.
Talk a bit about the advantages, if you would, of having spent time in IT, having spent time in different business lines and this operations role. The residue of each of those experiences must surely impact the way in which you manage IT and manage innovation.
Yeah. No, I mean, one of the previous roles I was talking about from a sort of the corporate development side of it, right? You end up getting a sort of a financial acumen as to what really makes money, in the P&C world, and the financial levers that you can actually pull. And a lot of having that sort of insight, just grounded, is very helpful, right? From a financial acumen side of just understanding how the company makes money and the levers that we can pull. And then when you get to some of the more operational roles, like managing our insurance products, being the operating officer over on the specialty side, what that really does is that, as I'm supporting those as my customers inside of the company, I can actually say, like, well, I've actually walked in your shoes, right? I understand the, sort of the decision making that they're trying to do, understanding the connection with technology, and really helping them shape, and solution what might be there for the future. And I think, to me, that's one of the largest pieces as we move forward and we think about where the CIO's role goes, in the future. Is it's a hybrid role, right? I mean, you have to understand the nuts and bolts of the infrastructure and security side of things, but at the same time, you're a change agent for the company, right? You are essentially trying to move forward, with enabling technologies, trying to move the company forward, and that's a different type of role, I think, than we've thought of traditionally as a CIO. And having that, to your point, having those different diverse backgrounds, I think, helps in that change management, sort of area, because you actually understand what's actually changing. It's not just technology. There's a whole process and operation underneath it, and a business model that might be changing as well.
And I want to get into some of the changes that have taken place. I know the CIO, the Chief Information Officer role, is the second of the roles of your current roles that you took on. But in many ways, I know also from some of what you've described in terms of a legacy transformation that's happened on the IT side, positions you all the better to seize opportunities from an innovation side. Talk a bit about that logic and some of the work that was done in order to create a better foundation.
No. So a lot of this was not just me. It was a lot of hard work that our IT team has done over the last, probably 5 to 7 years, where the recognition was, if we don't modernize some of our legacy platforms, really trying to be more nimble and having the optionality in the future is just a lot harder to do, right? And so what we really put in place, and this has been a 5 to 7 year journey, is we've spent, over $200 million on what I would say is basically touching every large platform in our ecosystem, from policy admins to billing to claim systems, and really trying to put sort of upgrades in place and platforms and middleware in place, so that the flexibility is there, meaning that if I need to have an API layer to be able to connect into third-party data for data analytics, or if I need to connect to another outside source for different platform and so forth, that we're able to do that in a cost-effective, total cost of ownership sort of way, being able to do that. So we feel like, we're never completely done with modernization efforts. I think it's one of those things where it's like, once you finish painting the bridge, you kind of go back to the start, and hopefully it's just a lighter coat the next time you have to do the painting. But so it's never completely done, but we feel like we're in a place today where we've created that optionality and the flexibility. So now it really starts to get into this whole piece around, like, well, how do we think about the future? And this is where sort of the innovation arm starts to come in, and sort of the solutioning that we're doing and the co-creating that we're doing with our business partners around like, okay, now that we have all of that foundation in place, where do we think the puck's going to go? And that's always, to us, that's the value add that we're bringing to the equation. And we can't do all of that without some sort of changes on our side too, so that there's some imperatives that we're working on as well, just trying to set ourselves up for that future.
That's a great way of framing it. I really like the way in which you describe that, Will. I also want to talk a little bit about how the team is set up. How do you structure? You have two sides of your responsibilities, which you've begun to articulate, of course. Are the teams set up as distinct teams? Are there any members of your team that have a foot in both worlds, as you do?
No. So the innovation team really is embedded within what I'll call the solutioning side of the business, right? When we think about the co-creation with the businesses, we think of it sort of like in a dual horizon environment where you have the problems of today, and then you have potentially the problems of tomorrow, or the advantages for tomorrow. And we join those conversations together with our business leaders because, at the end of the day, it's hard to separate one from the other, right? Because you start to get into the optionality and decision making of, should I be trying to optimize what I have today, or should I be just building for tomorrow, right? And so the conversations come together. I love how it comes together because it really, even if you're not going to do it the next year, it's on a roadmap. It's on our city plans, right? We know this is something that we're thinking about for this business unit or this functional area, and to have those blueprints and those roadmaps, I think are, it's critical for us as we think about where do we want to prioritize our work within our value chain? Where do we think we're getting the most strategic advantage, across our agent and customer and employee journey maps? I mean, that all of that sort of has to come together when we think about how we want to spend the company's money from a technology perspective. And so from an innovation perspective, it really is brought together at the front end of all that solutioning. And then when you think about like how we do our typical agile execution of development, that's broken out by business unit because there's a lot of platforms and really business strategies that are particular to those business units that we want to keep intact and make sure that that our business leaders get the SME knowledge that our technology folks are bringing to the table. So that those are broken out, into the different business unit areas and functional areas. But at that front end of the solutioning, the innovation piece is together with how we think about it, just as we talk about the dual horizons.
You referenced, Will, the creation of agent journey maps, customer journey maps, employee journey maps, and in many ways, obviously, that articulates the constituent groups that you and your team are responsible for impacting the experiences that you're bringing to bear with technology. It's interesting. I mean, so it's an extra layer. I mean, there are many peers of yours, at least on the CIO side, whose primary customer, if you will, wrong terminology, but is the internal operation. You have in three different constituent groups, a lot to manage, a lot to think about. As you contemplate the journey maps for those three constituent groups, can you talk a little bit about it? I recognize each of them have a lot of detail associated with them. How much overlap of the Venn diagram is there between those three? And maybe a little bit, if you don't mind, of specificity of the parts that don't overlap, some of the unique aspects or attributes as to how technology is used by each.
Yeah, so I'll start with the agent journey map. So for us, as we were talking about, right, this is the bread and butter to the strategy, right? Is the deep partnerships that we have with our agents, and so the journey maps of the agents really start from sort of the distribution strategy and how they interact with us from both a quoting perspective, a servicing perspective, and so forth. And we have agency councils built to be able to listen to what our agents are saying. Through the innovation side of it, we have committees like that we've joined to sort of get that outside in perspective. So that agent journey map, Yeah, is relatively specific to how an agent interacts with us. There's a lot of trends today around trying to get more efficient in the data passing back and forth, the security around that, obviously. And then there are some connection points though with our customer journey map as well. So when we think about our customer journey map, there is the part where at the front end of the selling cycle, the agent is actually selling to that customer, and so we think a lot with our agents around what's the best way to actually sell an account to a customer. So like on the personal line side, we're going after sort of the emerging affluent sort of customer. And so, we're interested in their home, we're interested in their auto, we're interested in the toys that they have, if they need cybersecurity. And so I think there's this approach with our agents to even thinking about, well, how does their customers really want to interact with us to be able to try and get that account sell, and where are the right times and the moments in somebody's life where these things start to matter more than if I'm just, if I'm renting a house and, and I have a car kind of thing and I'm just starting off. So there's a lot of the maps where we try and map out, even from an agent interaction, like what is that interaction even with our customer? And then when you think about the customer, once they become, sort of a policy holder with the Hanover, then you start to get into a lot of the self-service capabilities of like, how do I pay my bill? How do I make a change to my policy? How do I put in a claim? And what we've seen we've started to see a little bit of overlap between our personal lines customers and our small commercial customers, because essentially the small business owner is the one that's dealing with the insurance. It's not a third party or an employee of the company. So what we've seen is a lot of the digital trends of self-service between our personal lines customers and our small commercial business owners. They're starting to converge, and you see a lot of the same similarities of how they want to pay a bill, how they want to make changes to their policies, and sort of how they want to see a claim come through and see the progress of it and so forth. So we do see quite a bit of that. And then finally on the employee side, that's one for us that we've really put a focus on since the pandemic. And a lot of that is because, from our perspective, it's changed a little bit with a hybrid, sort of more of a hybrid working model, trying to keep the culture and the connectivity that we've had with people being in the office. We're trying to create some of those same things now in a hybrid environment. And a lot of that has to do with technology and how we think of how our employees are onboarded, how they're mentored, how they're having, good, sort of career development discussions with their managers. And we've been thinking a lot of that through with our own employee journey maps as to, what does a person who's not in one of our major offices, how do they experience life at the Hanover versus somebody who's in our Worcester office? And I think that by itself is an awesome challenge for us from a technology perspective, because there's obviously lots of tools that can be used, but a lot of it is for us is the secret sauce is the culture and sort of the pieces that we believe that makes us a great company to work for. We need to keep that stuff sustained, right? Through this time, and I think that's the focus that we've had on those employee journey maps, and how do we keep that connectivity together, through this time? And who knows, right? Maybe I believe it ends up a little bit. It's going to stay a bit more hybrid than what it was pre-pandemic, and I think for us, it's trying to get the best of both worlds, being able to give people the flexibility that they want, but then also, like I said, I think we can also excel in sort of our execution and being able to get the work that we want to get done. And from an IT perspective, I can tell you over the last 2 years, our teams have worked harder than ever during this time of having them leave the office, bringing them back into the office, all the protocols, all the cybersecurity that went around that. But then at the same time, keeping up with all of our business responsibilities and helping grow the businesses as we wanted to over the last couple of years. Right. Yeah. So it's been a really exciting time, but that employee journey maps will become more and more important as we go through time here.
Very well articulated. Thank you, Will.
Yeah.
Talk a bit about the role that data and analytics play. I know that you have a great emphasis on that, and certainly innovation begins with, in many ways, identifying opportunities through data and analytics and creatively using it to draw better conclusions and so on. Talk a bit about some of the specifics of how it's leveraged within your organization.
Yeah. So one of the examples that we talked about before was just on the agent journey maps and the efficiencies that our agents are looking for these days, right? Where they don't necessarily want to go to every competitor carrier point of sale site and create all of putting in the same data around a certain account 6 or 7 different times to generate all these quotes, right? So there's definitely leverageability of the data analytics on the front end of that customer, of the acquisition of a quote. Meaning, if I'm a shoe store in midtown Manhattan in New York City, there's a lot of attributes that I can gather from third-party data around that store. That's really going to help with the quoting process. And it's just less work for our agents, right? So, sort of what is it next to? Is it, what stores are next to it? There's obviously a piece around like revenue of that company. How many employees do they have? It's just, that typical information. We're able to access that information easier than we have in the past, right? And so there's a use case around data analytics around just efficiency for our agents and trying to make it easier for them to be able to do business with us. And then on the flip side, on the underwriting side, then we do get into sort of, to your point, around just insights that we can gather. And some of it is at a blunt level of like, would I write this risk or would I not write this risk? But then you also get into the fine details of like, is the actual account priced correctly? Like, can I get down to a different level of segmentation around a certain business to be able to get more refined in my own pricing, in a good way, or, either less or more on the premium, to, like I said, to try and just get a little bit more granular, a little bit more refined on what the risk really is, instead of a blunt view that, if an underwriter just Googles, a bunch of information about the company, maybe there's more that we can bring to the table that we can serve up to them. So from an efficiency standpoint, they're able to, we know if it's if it's a shoe store in Manhattan, this is what they're looking for information, and we're able to serve it up faster to them and more accurately. Those are the use cases, I think, for us that are most helpful, from a day-to-day. And, there's still, there's no silver bullet to the data analytics. What we've realized is, there's some things that certain companies are really good at getting, like employee counts. There's other things where, like, for a restaurant, we want to know if they have delivery for that restaurant. Those things are, they're harder to get because you're trying to use AI to try and derive whether or not that company really has a delivery service or not. And, sometimes it's a hit, sometimes it's a miss, just how they do it. And it's constantly getting better and better as the weeks and the months go by around just refining how those AI engines work and so forth. But it is very, very, very promising for us as a company to be able to get that kind of information more easily. And then, it obviously helps from an efficiency side, but then also helps from a loss cost side as well, of just getting more granular.
Completely makes sense. I also wanted to ask you, Will, there's a lot of money flowing into InsurTech, startups in the insurance industry, a lot of innovation happening from that perspective. I wonder, how do you think about partnering with, investing in, maybe even competing with some of the rising players? You have all sorts of advantages of history and scale and existing customer relationships and knowledge of the business and so on. One might argue that they have the advantages of nimbleness, in fact, and a lack of legacy, anything, and a lot of ambition, needless to say. Talk a bit about your own perspective about some of these rising players in the industry.
Yeah, so so sort of from a philosophy standpoint, it's we approach the InsurTechs very much how we approach our own agency partnerships, where it's a smaller subset, but it's a deeper relationship. So we spend a lot of time trying to figure out who we think, within our value chain, where we think our advantages are, targeting companies that sort of are in that part of the life cycle of our insurance life cycle, and then really trying to build a deep relationship with them. So we get to a place where what I'd say is the way we're investing in them, it's with our time and our knowledge of the industry. And so we're trying to help them, so a lot of these guys, they're not exactly sure of the problem that they're solving. And we try and help them curate it a bit more and trying to get a little bit more pithy around, like, this is the problem that you're trying to solve. And we've done that with a handful of our InsurTech partners that we were there with them day one when they started. And we're seeing them and helping them, get into our agency plan. And then we're obviously helping on the carrier side too. And then there are organizations where, accelerators and all that, where they are trying to also bring together the agent and carrier communities together. Because, you can't just have one piece and not the other. It turns into like a chicken or the egg sort of problem on the InsurTech side. So, certainly for us, it is the way we're investing in these companies is through our time and knowledge and really helping curate what problem are they trying to solve and help them target and honestly, like, help pilot and test and learn on some of these pieces. And that's been our approach. And, that's very similar to, like I said, how we think about our agency plan as well, right? It's a smaller set, deep relationship, and we're there to lean in and help them as well.
Excellent. And I wanted to ask you also, Will, are there any trends as you look to the future? We've talked about a number of them actually, and their relevance, especially in your innovation agenda. Any others that we haven't yet covered that are particularly intriguing to you as you look to the future?
Yeah. I think so I mentioned a little bit on the agency side, like the largest trends are definitely around efficiencies of how they quote and acquire, sort of bind policies. So there's a lot of there is a lot of energy towards sort of single entry of the data and then having it go out to multiple carriers and then come back with quotes. So doing it that way is sort of like a headless approach to our platform. So they may not be going into our point of sale systems, but they are still interacting with the same system, just without the screens. And so that is definitely a trend that we've seen with our agency plan of just trying to get more efficient. And I get it, right? They don't want their CSRs to enter the same information into 6 different systems to generate 6 quotes from 6, on the same company or risk, right? It just, the efficiencies have to be better for them for the economics to work. So we've definitely seen that on the agency side. On the customer side, it is definitely an acceleration on digital capabilities. A lot of it was from the pandemic of just not coming into the agent's office, wanting to do more self-service. So we spend a lot of time with our customers, mostly on that digital journey map, right? Like, what are the things they want to be able to self-service? What are their expectations from a claims handling side? how do I get my checks quicker? Or how do I, all the efficiencies around that life cycle is what we see on the customer side. And then we hit a little bit on the employee piece. But for us, especially in my world in technology, a lot of it is that you hear about the great resignations and people moving roles and so forth. So a lot of our focus as a company is the retention of our employees and being able to keep them from a career perspective, moving forward, from a culture perspective, being a place where the values of the company and how we show ourselves every day are important. And then finally, also from like a, we haven't talked about this a lot, but even from like an inclusion, diversity side and equity, right? That is something that we're on our own journey on today as a company that's very important to us. And we believe that, when we talk about just sort of that co-creation piece, having the diversity of thought, right, and the diversity of backgrounds and perspectives of people is what's going to give us the best answers and the best results at the end of the day. So on that employee side, that is another trend that's, maybe it's a little bit of technology, but it's also just, I think, as the CIO and managing a group of technologists, right? That's the kind of stuff that comes to my mind, because it's very easy today to take a phone call and explore other opportunities, and we believe that we're what we want to do is we want to offer those same capabilities and more, right, at the Hanover. And so those are the things that from a trend perspective are important to me on the employee side.
Excellent. One other question I wanted to ask you, Will, is somebody who's had such a remarkable rise within your organization. I wonder if there are some secrets to your success. If there were a younger member of your team who wanted to know a little bit about your pathway and recommendations on how they might achieve comparable success, what are some of the things that come to mind? What have been some of the secrets to yours?
So obviously one of our strategic tenets that we even have within IT is we call it we call it building T-shaped employees or the IT athlete, right? And so I think for me, thinking back on my own career, there was a version of that happened. Meaning, when we think about the T-shaped, it's your deep technical knowledge in something, right? But at the same time, at the top of the T, you're building out that broadness of being able to really have an integrated thinking, having an integrated thought around how you do your own solutioning. That's one of the areas that we're really pushing on hard, even within our own world, because I think having the opportunities and sort of the special projects to be able to go off and do something that's a little bit different than what you normally do, and I think is important. And so I think for me, I had to change seats to be able to get that type of broadness and that experience by moving into different roles. But I think there's a version of that today that we can offer in our own world, where we can offer some of that broadness without people having to actually feel like they're having to take a risk and so forth. And that to me is like, one of the pieces around our own development, where, we want to say everybody has a major and everybody has a minor, right? Just, sort of like in college terms, what is that? And from a development perspective, are we able to enable that as an organization? Meaning, if you are changing seats, we want to promote that. But we also want to make sure that if it doesn't work out, that's okay, right? It's still a win. And you have a soft landing spot, and it won't feel as risky as, kind of sort of like jumping off the ledge, and that it's something that you can come back to, if it doesn't work out, you're able to come back to something that you enjoyed before. So sort of building out that environment, I think, is important. And for me, I think I had to do it by changing seats. And that's a way to do it. And certainly I think that the broadness of those roles helps me in the perspective of my role today. It obviously, it helps from both a financial side, but even from hey, I can say that I've sat in somebody else's shoes, right? And understand what the pressures are that they're trying to deal with on a day-to-day basis. And I think that broadness and sort of that integrated thinking, I think is what is really key to, technology for for our employees and our early and career employees going into the future.
Certainly great insights, Will. I really appreciate that. Thank you for a great conversation across the board. Will Lee, wonderful to hear more about your experience, your rise in the Hanover Insurance Group, the many roles you've played, the impact of that on the current couple of roles that you own, the nature of innovation in an organization such as yours, the ways in which the company has continued to refine its capabilities and innovate during trying times through the pandemic, and your vision of the future. It's been a great conversation.
Yeah, no, thank you very much. Thank you for the time.